Claude Schreier came by today to plan the winter diary radio program for the West German radio. After dinner, we walked the quarter-mile out to the road. There was a powdering of light snow, making the landscape bright under the stars. I opened and closed the gate while Claude recorded it. Then I went to the tin mailbox and flapped the lid. Both are sounds characteristic of rural life in Canada. The flapping got the neighbor's dog barking. Then, more distantly, other dogs began to bark. Dogs were the original alarm systems in the countryside and remain so despite electronic technology. Could be a thief or a wolf out there. The message is telegraphed from farm to farm, and behind every dark doorway, a farmer cocks his gun. The dogs grew silent again as we trudged back. Entering the warm house with a fire burning brightly in the grate, I suddenly realized that we had already discovered a valuable leitmotif for our program. The contrast between warm, populated rooms and the vast cold spaces that surround them during the Canadian winter. There is a painting by Cornelius Krieghoff, 1815-1872, entitled Merrymaking, that illustrates this drama between interior and exterior. A party at the Jolliffe Inn is breaking up, and the revellers are spilling out to depart into the cold, snowy dawn. The drama of the scene is depicted in Bruegel style. But the contrast between hot interior and cold exterior is distinctly Canadian. The same theme recurs in our best novelists. For instance, in Frederick Philip Grove's Over Prairie Trails, 1922, or in Sinclair Ross's As for Me and My House, 1941, the contrast between interior and exterior creates the drama between society and selfhood. Marshall McLuhan summed it up epigrammatically when he said that Canadians go out to be alone and come in to be with company, while elsewhere people go out to be with company and come home to be alone.
And if you're really lucky to be at a cottage in the winter in the morning and there's like almost no sound, and then you'll hear like a branch cracking or something.
The hinge is the door. One sound characteristic of the Canadian countryside is the slap of a screen door. I've known it since my childhood. Of course, it is intended to keep the insects out of the house in summer, but out of laziness, the screen door is often left on during the winter too, as mine is. The door has a coil spring attached to it so that it will slap shut quickly. Usually, there is another contraption on the side with a hairpin spring to snap it firm. If it isn't oiled, it squeaks. So the entire sound event is actually quite complex, consisting first of a swish as the door opens, then a swoosh as it closes, followed by a residual snap as the second spring is released to hold it shut. The subject of doors could occupy a doctoral thesis or two. Every continent and climate has its own vocabulary and rhetoric of doors, as different as the languages of the people who open and close them. Every Canadian knows the three-toned Canadian train whistle without knowing it. Tuned to an E-flat minor triad with the fundamental at 311 Hertz, it's the most authoritative sound mark of the country. Curiously analogous to the yellow bell or huangchang, which established the tuning for all music in the golden days of ancient China. The legend goes that when the tuning of the yellow bell was abandoned, the empire would fall into ruin. Something like that is happening here. For today, more and more train whistles are out of tune, and with the building of overpasses and tunnels, urban dwellers rarely ever hear them. Canadian railroads all run east-west. As the authority of the railroad vanishes, the east-west axis gives way to a south-north bias. For example, American invasion. Eventually, in the far distance, we hear the L14 whistle, the signal for a level crossing, long, long, short, long. Which incidentally is also the rhythm of the opening phrase of the Canadian national anthem. It is warmer today than yesterday, and a heavy fog lies over the snow, so that the acoustic horizon surpasses the visual. Frederick Philip Grove talks about getting lost in the fog in Over Prairie Trails. Then he had to rely on the instinct of his horses. I had become all ear. Even though my buggy was silent and though the road was coated with a thin film of soft clay mud, I could distinctly hear by the muffled thud of the horses' hooves on the ground that they were running over a grade. That confirmed my bearings. So now I was close to the 3-farm cluster. I listened intently again for the horses' thump. Yes, there was that muffled hoofbeat again. I was on the last grade that led to the angling road across the corner of the marsh. What would the prairies be without wind? It's the keynote sound here. The one against which everything else is registered. But to record it, impossible. The microphone hasn't yet been invented to effectively record nature's most elementary sounds. Wind, rain, fire, the mistake in recording the environment is in trying to pull a huge spread of events, far and near in all directions, into a single focus. The soundscape isn't stereophonic. It's spherical. The stereophonic preoccupation in recording results from stereoscopy rather than any real understanding of the listening experience in which one is always at the center. One would like the microphone to observe the same respect for figure ground that our ears do, elevating those sounds we wish to receive and suppressing those we don't. But of course, the microphone is not an ear, and everything is registered according to its amplitude only. Could we imagine a future microphone? With a discrimination circuit to allow us to reproduce the wished-for soundscape rather than the real one? Or is that merely another form of pathetic fallacy that only the romantic recordist could hope for?
And here's an example of a sound that is so delicate that the microphone picks it up better than the human ear.
The value of the microphone is that it presents simply what is there. The tape recorder puts a frame around it, often astonishing us with the sound events our real ears have missed. Claude confesses his excitement for recording. He is almost like a fighter pilot seeking out the enemy, the elusive sound object, slating his various dives at the material we've targeted for a take, hoping the desired event will occur on cue, wondering whether to stalk it silently or prompt it or forget it and seek another campaign.
So many things can go wrong,
He says excitedly. Ruefully, I agree.
When Murray and I recorded Winter Diary in 1997, we recorded a lot of different winter sounds, but not cross-country skiing. And it is a typical sound of winter in Canada, and a very rich one. You can hear me skiing now, as well as people skiing beside me.
People who live by the sea know how the color of the water changes constantly. But one has to live with a long winter to know the perpetual changes in the sound as well as the color of snow.
And skiing sounds have a number of different elements. There's the push and the pull of the ski, and the poles that hit into the snow, and of course the breath of the skier, and sometimes you can hear the wind in the trees. Snowmobiles in the distance. Dog.
Even the lapse of an hour can alter it profoundly, and the experienced listener can pinpoint the temperature by the sound of his footsteps in it. On the cold night it screeches. Sometimes a crust will build up to produce a crunchy quality, or even several crusts separated by layers of powdery snow, giving variations of dissonance with each step. We always take the most ordinary sounds for granted. Assuming cars to be universal, we forget that they sound different in different environments. On a country highway, we recorded the approach and departure of individual cars and trucks, sometimes lasting 3 minutes without any other sound. Where else on earth could you do that? Excursion into park. Total isolation. We realized that the only way we could give an impression of soundscape here was by making sounds ourselves.
When Murray Schaefer and I did the Winter Diary, one of the sequences was called Calling, where we were in the forest and listening for the reverberation in a winter space. And in that case it was a forest. And here I am on January 11th, 2022, Gatineau Park. I'm going to try a similar experience where I'm going to walk in a circle away from the microphone and see what that sounds like, and once in a while I'll cry out like we did back then, "Hey!" And you can hear the reverberation and the movement, and it's a way to experience a winter soundscape by interacting with it. So here we go.
So we set up the microphone in the snow and walked away from it, calling in different directions.
Hey! 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 Hey!
How far is it across the valley?
Hey! Hey!
What is the difference between a bare, deciduous forest and a leafy, evergreen one?
Hey!
Your voice will tell you. I came out alone in the car after Claude had gone to sleep. Never had I heard the world so silent. Is it near or far, this black landscape? My own slightest movement makes it seem near. The frosted crack of a distant tree makes it vast. My breathing brings it close again. Justin Winkler pointed out that the soundscape is essentially a static term, but here it seems dynamic, increasing to an infinite volume, then shrinking right inside me as my stomach growls. I turn the ignition key and am startled and relieved at the same time. My escape. Strange phenomenon this morning on waking. In my dream, I had been singing a solo song at some kind of gathering. I finished, and everyone applauded enthusiastically. I woke to hear the propane heater come on. So the conclusion of my song and heater were synchronized, but I stress that I had sung a rather lengthy song to its conclusion before the applause of the heater. I even remembered the song and sang it over again to myself while lying in bed. Had I anticipated the end of it and paced the singing to a sound that I could somehow forehear? Or had the whole event occurred in the fraction of a second as the heater came on? Spotting some children knocking down some icicles in a St. Rose du Lac, we rushed over to record them, but frightened them away. So we knocked the icicles down ourselves and then kicked them along the street. Each chunk had a different pitch, and pieces, when they broke into pieces, the pitch rose. I was glad to have this other form of frozen water to add to our repertoire. The sun was setting. It was totally quiet. Eventually, the whisper of a jet aircraft became audible. It crossed the sky distantly. Its passage lasting 8 minutes without any other sound interrupting it. A perfect sound event in an anesthetized environment.
I'd like to conclude Winter Diary Revisited with a quote from a book Murray wrote in 1977 called Music in the Cold. Here are the last 11 lines of that book.
Saplings are beginning to sprout again in the moist earth. Beneath it, animals can be heard digging their burrows. Soon, the thrush will return. The old technology of waste is gone. What then remains? The old virtues, harmony, the universal soul, hard work. I will live supersensitized, the antenna of a new race. I will create a new mythology. It will take time. It will take time. There will be time.